They ruled the airwaves, broke records, and defined an entire decade. Madonna, Michael Jackson, Prince, and Whitney Houston. 4 icons of 1980s pop, each with their own surprising connections to Disney. Hey, this is Synergy Loves Company, where we explore how Disney connects to everything so you can feel connected to Disney even when you can't be at the parks. I'm Eric, and today we're diving into a full story, decades in the making. But the main decade I'm talking about is the 1980s. In this special compilation, we'll look back at 4 pop legends and their unique intersections with Disney, from soundtracks and theme park moments to business partnerships and cultural synergy. This is Disney and the 80s pop revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Synergy Loves Company. You may know her as the material girl who is consistently burning up the charts, but we are crazy for Madonna, the true blue artist who should be cherished for the way she expresses herself through music, art, and a constantly evolving image. Today on Synergy Loves Company, let's get into the groove and take a look at how Madonna connects to Disney. Madonna was born in Bay City, Michigan on August 16, 1958, and that's her real name, Madonna Louise Ciccone. It's not a stage name, Madonna. Growing up, she took piano and ballet lessons, and she really loved to dance. In fact, she got a scholarship to study dance at the University of Michigan. However, she dropped out in 1978 and decided to move to New York City. She started to find work as a backup dancer for some musical acts, and during this time she met musician Dan Gilroy, and the two began dating and forming their own band, The Breakfast Club. No, not the movie, that would come later in the 80s. The band was first and less popular. Madonna left The Breakfast Club before they gained any traction, but they did go on to become a pretty decently sized band. But I do want to take a little break really quick and talk about The Breakfast Club and its co-founder, Dan Gilroy. The Breakfast Club actually did have some minimal success without Madonna, but later on in 1990, Dan Gilroy starred as Gordon Goose in Disney Channel's Mother Goose Rock and Rhyme. Not totally Madonna related, but super Disney connected, so bear with me. If you haven't seen Disney Channel's Mother Goose Rock and Rhyme, it is quite the spectacle. The movie features nursery rhymes done in a fun, funky, and fresh early 90s style, and it has an all-star cast including Gary Shandling, Woody Harrelson, Shelley Duvall, Little Richard, Bobby Brown, Cyndi Lauper. There's just so many. It even has both Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel, but not Simon and Garfunkel. They're not performing together. Don't think it's a reunion or anything like that. No. Art Garfunkel is Georgie Porgy, a bartender at a club where the Stray Cats perform as cats, because that's a thing. I almost didn't think this was real. I vaguely remembered something like this from when I was a kid, but I thought it was like an amalgam of a bunch of stuff I'd seen. But no, it's totally real. It is a 90s pop culture fever dream, and it's definitely something you should check out. But let's get back to Madonna, though. She left The Breakfast Club and decided to go out on her own as a solo artist in 1980. After recording a demo and hanging out at all the popular New York dance clubs, she finally got a few of those clubs to play her music. In 1982, she released her first single, Everybody, and not everybody liked it. In fact, some of the early reviews were not very kind at all. One of them said she sounded like Minnie Mouse on helium. Not a great first Disney reference, but stay with me. Her next single, Burnin' Up, was a bigger hit, and her album had a number of big hits on it, including Holiday and Lucky Star. And from there, the hits kept coming with her next album, 1985's Like a Virgin. She started to become the biggest pop diva in the world. Fans started to dress like her to sold out concerts all over the world. Everyone was obsessed. It was kind of like Swifties planning their outfits for Taylor Swift concerts today, but like the original version. Madonna was kind of a big deal. She created the modern female pop star mold that would be repeated for years to come. At the height of Madonna's 80s popularity, when everyone wanted to be like Madonna, Disney even got into the game with 1988's Totally Mini TV special. Totally Mini was the first project to put Minnie Mouse front and center. It was her first starring role. In the special, she shows off how cool she is while performing songs with Elton John and helping Suzanne Summers teach Robert Carradine how to be cool. Because Minnie is the it girl of the 80s, just like Madonna. Madonna's picture is even featured on the wall of the Minnie Mouse Center for the Totally Unhip, implying that Madonna has learned how to be hip from Minnie Mouse and Suzanne Summers. I don't care what you say. The fact that Disney gave Minnie her first leading role for the first time in 60 years, and that it was as a pop star, hip, it girl in the 1980s, this is a direct result of the impact Madonna had on pop culture at the time. She was becoming one of the biggest pop stars in the world at the time and redefining what it meant to be a woman in pop music. All of this while MTV was super important, and she took advantage of the music video medium, which made her even more of a star and gave her some big silver screen breaks. By the end of the decade, Madonna released her album Like a Prayer. It was a statement, it was controversial, it was serious art, and you could dance to it. And at this point, critics were calling her one of the most compelling voices of the 80s, a little different than how they started out talking about her music at the beginning of the decade. In 1987, during a photo shoot, rock star photographer Herb Ritt snapped a picture of Madonna wearing a Minnie Mouse ears headband. This was her little way of poking fun at those early remarks that she sounded like Minnie Mouse on helium. She used that photo as the cover of the single to Dear Jessie from the album Like a Prayer. The song Dear Jessie has a psychedelic lullaby feel, and the lyrics have a lot of fantasy imagery. It's not one of those dance floor jams. The music video for Dear Jessie invokes even more Disney. It starts with a dreaming child and moves into an animated dream world where Madonna is an animated fairy looking pretty much like Tinkerbell. In the video, the Tinkerbell Madonna magically makes the child's toys come alive, and she visits the worlds of the artwork on the kid's bedroom wall. But that stuff's all only Disney-like, so let's get to the real Disney and Madonna stuff. Throughout her career, Madonna did a lot of movie roles, small roles with cameo parts, and big starring roles. She had been establishing herself as a movie star as well as a music superstar. In 1990, Madonna starred as Breathless Mahoney in Disney's Touchstone's Dick Tracy. I was a total Dick Tracy fan as a kid. I thought the villains looked creepy and cool. I really wanted that communicator watch, and I was even Dick Tracy for Halloween. I was all in. In the movie, Madonna's Breathless Mahoney was a showgirl lounge singer who plays a major role in the story. No spoilers. Go watch the movie. But the role of Breathless and the 1930s style of the movie inspired Madonna to record a whole album of songs from and inspired by Dick Tracy. It was called I'm Breathless. Get it? Her character was Breathless Mahoney. I'm Breathless. Anyway, it was one of the soundtrack albums for the Dick Tracy movie. Dick Tracy was kind of all over the place because the title star producer, Warren Beatty, he wanted the movie to kind of be a little bit of everything. The movie was scored by Disney legend Danny Elfman, and even though it wasn't a musical, they got the Stephen Sondheim to write original songs for the movie. And Madonna sang a few of them that were also on the I'm Breathless album. Sooner or Later, More, and What Can You Lose, which was a duet with Mandy Patinkin. She added a slew of other songs with a 1930s Prohibition-era lounge sound to these Sondheim numbers from the movie and made a whole album where all the songs sounded like a 1930s album recorded in the 1990s. That is all of them but one. While working on the movie and exploring 30s speakeasies and golden age Hollywood movie stars, Madonna wanted to write a song that would fit the feel of the era, but still be played on the 90s radio. At the same time, she saw dancers at the clubs in New York performing a style of dance where they would strike a pose inspired by fashion models on the cover of a magazine. It was called voguing. The Dick Tracy-inspired modern song was Vogue. It was Vogue. That's why she lists all those golden age Hollywood celebrities in the middle of the song. Don't just stand there, let's get to it, strike a pose, there's nothing to it, Vogue. All right. It's not in the movie itself. Vogue was released, though, on I'm Breathless, that Disney soundtrack of music from and inspired by Dick Tracy. And Vogue was inspired by Dick Tracy, a Disney touchstone film. Dang, that was tons of Madonna Disney history right there. That's a big one. And there's more of it on the way. In 1996, Madonna got to grace the Disney silver screens once again in Hollywood Pictures' Evita. Evita is a musical by composer Andrew Lloyd Webber and Disney legend lyricist Tim Rice. In 1976, they started the project as a follow-up to their smash success musical Jesus Christ Superstar. Evita started as a studio-recorded concept album about beloved Argentinian First Lady Eva Perón. It was about her rise to popularity and her premature death from cancer at the age of 33. Next, in 1978, the musical hit the stage with a full production. In 1996, after Tim Rice had worked on Disney projects like Aladdin and Lion King, Disney decided to give Rice's musical the movie treatment starring Madonna as Eva Perón. For the movie version of the musical, Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber wrote You Must Have Loved Me. Madonna performed the song in the film, and it won the Academy Award for Best Song in 1996. Madonna had two other hit singles from that soundtrack, Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, and Another Suitcase in the Hall. In addition to starring in Disney movies and recording music for the soundtracks, Madonna's music has been tied to many Disney projects, soundtracks that she did not appear in movies for. Her music's been in projects like Amphibia on Disney Channel, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and DTV. They've all featured her music. But most recently, and in a very big way, Madonna's music played a very important role in Marvel Studios' Deadpool and Wolverine. Just like the Guardians of the Galaxy, music plays a big role in the Deadpool movies. And when they were writing and staging the film Deadpool and Wolverine, Ryan Reynolds and Sean Levy knew they needed Madonna's song Like a Prayer for the movie. It's the finishing touch on some important scenes in the movie, and like we said, Madonna treats her work as an artist, and letting just anyone use it for any purpose could cheapen her art, especially specific songs that hold a special place in her heart, like a Prayer. Ryan Reynolds and Sean Levy knew they couldn't just submit a request to Madonna's people to secure the song. Oh no, they had to ask her in person. They had to explain what they wanted and make an appeal to Madonna in hopes that she would grant them the permission to use her most perfect work of art for their film. They got a meeting set up with Madonna and made their pitch. They showed her what her song could do to enhance the scene they had already filmed. Madonna actually really liked what she saw, except for a few notes that she had about the scene. In a few different interviews, one with Andy Cohen, another on Live with Kelly and Mark, Ryan Reynolds tells the story that Madonna had some director's notes about the scene, and apparently they were spot on. Her instincts were right, and Reynolds and Levy agreed with her. They went back, did some reshoots to Madonna's notes, and they got to use Like a Prayer to great effect in the movie. I wish I could tell you what she asked to be changed, but we don't exactly know what changes she offered. Reynolds and Levy won't say what they are, but they tell us that they took her advice and the movie is better for it. Madonna's impact on the Walt Disney Company is probably the most high profile of our 80s pop star royalty. She got headline billing in some big budget movies for Disney, one of which won an Oscar. She was inspired by her work with Dick Tracy to write one of her biggest hits of all time that brought an international resurgence to voguing, a dance that was actually dying out at the time. Madonna, the Queen of Pop, was an actor, an artist, a performer who worked with the Walt Disney Company and was inspired by Disney projects in her own work. But she wasn't necessarily a Disney fan like you or me. In fact, for a brief moment in the 80s, she dated Michael Jackson. I know, weird, right? They were not a compatible match at all. And one of the things that they butted heads on was her refusal to go to Disneyland with Michael. Michael Jackson loved Disneyland so much. He even tried to replicate it for himself a few times over the years. At least that's what the rumors say. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Michael Jackson and Disney. Michael Jackson was the biggest international pop star in the 1980s. Other artists on MTV were trying to keep up with his cinematic music video short films. His celebrity status was exploding, and he was the biggest name in entertainment, with millions of adoring fans across the world buying his records and copying his iconic dance moves. While the world was getting their entertainment from Michael Jackson, he was getting his own entertainment from Disney. The King of Pop was a huge Disney fan, and he understood how important storytelling was in entertainment. He studied Disney movies and theme parks, and even the life of Walt Disney. He was a huge fan of Walt Disney. His brothers remembered that when they were on tour, Michael Jackson would read biographies of Walt Disney and any information he could find about Disneyland, Disney movies, and Walt Disney. Today on Synergy Loves Company, we'll remember the times Michael Jackson connected to Disney. Michael Jackson was born in Gary, Indiana on August 29, 1958. Just like Madonna, Michael was a Great Lakes region northern Midwesterner born in August of 1958. What are the odds of that? Michael was born into a big family, a big musical family, and his dad, Joe Jackson, had dollar signs in his eyes when he saw his sons performing together. They were great, and little Michael would be the ideal cute frontman boy for a family band. The Jackson 5 were a family boy band before boy bands were a thing. Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, and Michael Jackson. If this were 30 to 40 years later, they would probably have found themselves on the Disney Channel. At least on one of those Disney Mania CDs doing a Disney cover. Oh, wait a minute. Oh no, they weren't on a Disney Mania CD, sorry about that. But they did have a big Disney cover. In 1969, the Jackson 5 released their first album with Motown, and they were pretty new on the scene, pretty much unknown. So their album was titled Diana Ross Presents the Jackson 5. Diana Ross was a bona fide star at this time, so that would get them some attention. Could you imagine today if it was like Beyonce Presents or Taylor Swift Presents some random band you never heard of? It would still sell a ton of records. Anyway, the first track on that first album is the Jackson 5's cover of Zippity Doo-Dah. Okay, elephant in the room. Zippity Doo-Dah is a song from the Song of the South, and recently Disney has been trying to distance themselves from this song and that movie and everything. But there was a time when that song was synonymous with Disney, and the world was introduced to the Jacksons with that Disney song. By the Jackson 5 putting this as their debut song on their debut album, they were announcing to the world that they were a family band of children with a family-friendly Disney-like sensibility. And it worked. We'll draw you in with Diana Ross and then hit you with some cute kids singing Disney songs. The Jackson 5 was big stars among tweens before tweens were even a thing. They really could have had their own Jonas-style Disney Channel show. And they practically did. The Jackson 5 had a cartoon show on Saturday mornings. Michael Jackson is the only one of our 80s Pop Trinity to be a regular animated character. Not a Disney one, but it's something. The Jackson 5 show was made by Rankin Bass, the same studio that brought us Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and those other stop-motion holiday specials. Each episode featured the Jackson brothers on different adventures related to being famous musicians. Sometimes they were touring, sometimes they had episodes that were spoofs on fairy tales like Cinderella or their own version of The Wizard of Oz. What's weird, though, is that the show didn't use the actual voices of the Jacksons. They had other voice actors do all of the voices. Because of this, though, Michael Jackson actually loved watching the show week to week to see what he was up to on the show this time. In addition to voice actors doing the Jackson brothers, other famous faces were voiced by different voice actors. Disney legend Paul Frees, the ghost host, did the voice of Jackson 5 producer and Motown mogul Berry Gordy. But all of that was the Jackson 5. We got to get into Michael Jackson's solo career, and let's not lose sight of one thing. It was all started by a rat. Wait, I thought it was supposed to say mouse. No, that's Walt Disney. Michael Jackson's solo career was all started with a rat. Michael Jackson's first big solo single was Ben from the horror movie of the same name. The song and the movie are both about a boy who befriends a pleasant little rat named Ben, who wreaks havoc across the city at night with a street gang full of rats. It was a sequel to Willard, another rat havoc movie. Anyways, Michael Jackson's solo career was actually running concurrently to the Jackson 5's, and he was pretty much the lead singer of the Jackson 5. That's a little strange. It would be like if Justin Timberlake was doing his solo stuff while he was still touring and performing with NSYNC. The two were muddled together for a while, but we'll sort that out in a little bit. Let's get to the Disney parks. In 1974, the Jackson 5 performed as part of Sandy in Disneyland. It was a CBS TV special where 70s comedian Sandy Duncan explored Disneyland, meeting other celebrities along the way. The Jackson 5 were dressed as sailors, with Michael taking the role of captain aboard the sailing ship Columbia. They perform a medley of ABC and I Want You Back. Hey, I Want You Back was used in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, remember? And it's one of the songs you could get on Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout at California Adventure. Anyways, Michael Jackson loved exploring the parks. And when he did performances like this for TV, he often wanted to go off and ride the attractions when he was between takes. He would do this even more later in 1980 when he once again starred in a Disney special, this time solo. In fact, by 1980, Michael Jackson was really on his way to being a solo star, bigger than the Jackson 5. In the 1980 TV special Kraft Salutes Disneyland's 25th anniversary, Michael Jackson returned to Disneyland to perform When You Wish Upon a Star, as well as Ease On Down the Road from The Wiz. He was the Scarecrow in that one. Disney just loved celebrating milestone anniversaries with Michael Jackson in the 1980s. Michael loved Disney, and Disney knew that Michael loved the parks. So in 1985, for Disneyland's 30th anniversary, they had a walk-around Goofy character dressed as Michael Jackson with the glove and all. And Michael Jackson actually got to meet the Goofy Michael Jackson version. But these weren't the only times that Michael went to the parks. Oh no, he went any chance he got, which was hard because people would recognize him. He was the biggest pop star in the world in the 1980s. He had to find some clever ways to get the Disney parks experience without getting noticed. There were some rumors that he had built some sort of version of Pirates of the Caribbean in his living room. And then there's the Neverland Ranch. He tried to make his own version of Disneyland at his home. His home estate was giant, and it was named after Peter Pan's Neverland, and it had an amusement park and an entryway inspired by, or probably stolen from, Disneyland. And Michael Jackson's giant Disney memorabilia collection was there in Neverland. But building his own stand-in for the parks did not stop him from going to the parks still. Sometimes he went in disguise. Sometimes he went when the parks were closed. Disneyland was easy because he lived in Southern California. After his family broke it big, they got the heck out of Gary, Indiana. Walt Disney World, though, that was harder. He needed a place to stay when he was in town. And he wanted to stay at the Contemporary, but it was all booked, like for real. They couldn't even accommodate Michael, the King of Pop Jackson. Anyway, he called around and he found a place to stay at the Hotel Royal Plaza over on Hotel Plaza Boulevard. They gave him the big penthouse suite, and he actually really loved it. He kept going back, so much so that the Hotel Royal Plaza let him decorate the suite, and they named it the Michael Jackson Suite. And what's crazy is if he wasn't staying there, guests could book the Michael Jackson Suite at the Hotel Royal Plaza. The hotel building is actually still there, but it's not the Royal Plaza anymore. And there's not a Michael Jackson Suite anymore. Today, it's the Renaissance Orlando Resort and Spa by Marriott in the Disney Springs Resort area. So you could still stay there and get that good neighbor experience. See where the Michael Jackson Suite used to be. In 1982, though, Michael Jackson's Thriller came on the scene and really launched Michael's solo career into the stratosphere. The singles, the music videos, he was everywhere. And just a couple years later, another Michael was stirring things up at Disney as their new CEO. And this one loved celebrities. When Michael Eisner found out that mega superstar Michael Jackson was a fan of Disney parks, he knew he had to find a way to bring him in, make some synergy. At this time, Michael Jackson was actually interested in being in the movie business. His epic music videos were known for being cinematic short films set to music and usually included the big names of Hollywood producers and directors. It only made sense that he'd want to get into feature films. So one day, Michael Jackson's friend David Geffen called up his friend Jeffrey Katzenberg over at Disney and told him that Michael was interested in making a movie with Disney. Jeffrey Katzenberg showed Michael Jackson around the Disney studios, but also brought him over to Imagineering to show off what they were doing over there. Katzenberg knew that Jackson was a big fan of the Disney parks. Jackson, of course, gravitated towards the parks, even more so than the movies. Even though the conversation started as a way to get Michael into film, he kind of more wanted to get into parks. Eisner and Katzenberg found this as an opportunity to put Imagineering and the Disney studio together to make an epic 3D in-park movie for Disneyland starring Michael Jackson. When Michael Jackson agreed to the idea, he requested that Steven Spielberg and George Lucas get involved. Around that same time, Michael Eisner had shown George Lucas around Disney to entice him to collaborate with Disney Imagineering on a new attraction that would become Star Tours. So Lucas was already in the Disney fold, and it was easy to get him to sign on. Spielberg, though, wasn't available. So Disney got Francis Ford Coppola on board. Originally, some of the stories that they tried to work out had Michael Jackson in Disneyland dancing with audio animatronics that had come to life, but it was very similar to like just Thriller in the Disney parks. So Jackson didn't want to do that. He wanted to lean into that George Lucas vibe. He wanted to be in his own song and dance version of Star Wars. And he got to be Captain EO. In the story, Captain EO and his ragtag crew of outsiders travel to a dark planet ruled by an evil spider alien queen played by Angelica Houston. They use music to spread joy and defeat the darkness in the planet. Michael Jackson wrote 2 original songs for the project, Another Part of Me, which would show up again on the album Bad in 1987 and become a pretty moderate hit for him. And the other song was We Are Here to Change the World, which remained unreleased from Michael Jackson until a box set came out in the mid-2000s. But there's a really great cover version out there by Denise Williams if you want to give it a listen. Captain EO would debut in Tomorrowland in Disneyland in 1986 and then open on the other coast in the Imagination Pavilion in Epcot. Because of Captain EO, Michael was officially part of Disney Parks history, maybe even part of the Star Wars canon. In Captain EO, the cosmic bass player in Michael Jackson's crew/band is a little butterfly-winged fuzzball named Fuzzball. Recently, during D23, Disney released a trailer for Skeleton Crew that shows Fuzzball or another of his species in a cage. There's also a character who looks a little bit like Hooter from Captain EO's crew, who already looked a little bit like Max Rebo from Star Wars. So is Captain EO a Star War? We'll just have to wait and see. Captain EO is Michael Jackson's biggest contribution to Disney and a dream come true to the Disney fan that he was. Captain EO left the parks to make way for Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, but it remained a fan favorite and theme park cult classic for fans. In 2009, Michael Jackson passed away just before he was going to go on one final farewell tour. This is it. After his passing, Disney brought back Captain EO to both Disneyland and Epcot to celebrate the King of Pop's life and Disney legacy. And that's just about the end of Michael Jackson and Disney's story. But there are a few more Disney roles Michael had taken on over the years that I want to rapid fire mention. So here we go. Number 1, Michael Jackson had a secret, or not so secret, cameo in The Simpsons. Though it wasn't Disney at the time, Michael Jackson guest starred in a season 3 episode of The Simpsons called Stark Raving Dad. In the episode, Homer meets and befriends a man who thinks he's Michael Jackson in a psychiatric hospital. Jackson actually provided his voice, but was uncredited on the episode, so it left us all guessing when it originally came out. Later, we learned that it was actually Michael who had done the voice work. Another one is Michael Jackson and his brothers were featured on Disney Channel's DTV. And if you haven't checked out that episode, DTV, I recorded that one a few months back. Go give it a listen. Just like Madonna, one of the Jackson 5's hit songs, Dancing Machine, was featured on the Disney Channel series DTV. Dancing Machine was put to footage of the Dance of the Hours segment from Fantasia. You know, the one with dancing gators and hippos. But that's not all. Michael Jackson's solo hit Thriller was also featured in DTV's 1987 Monster Hits Halloween special. It featured a lot of spooky scenes from Disney shorts and highlighted Witch Hazel and Huey, Dewey, and Louie's Trick or Treat short. Those DTV videos are a great place to close the curtain on Disney and Michael Jackson's connections. Michael Jackson was known for his music videos. He even had the honor of MTV naming their Video Vanguard Award after him. He set the bar for music videos in the 1980s and 90s, but he was never able to make that crossover to the feature films. But our next and final member of our 80s trinity of pop music in this series is someone who revolutionized pop music in theatrical feature films. And he's got a name that's made for Disney. Prince and Disney. Prince Rogers Nelson was born on June 7, 1958 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And if you've been keeping score at home, Prince, Michael Jackson, and Madonna were all born in the summer of 1958 in the northern Midwest. What are the odds of that? Like, for real. Where Michael Jackson was known for his dance moves and Madonna was known for her style evolution, Prince was all about his musicianship. He got into music, especially playing guitar, in the Minneapolis music scene of the 1970s. It was a collection of clubs and musicians who would shape Prince, who would then go on to shape the Minneapolis sound and the music of the 80s. Prince excelled on guitar, but he was a multi-instrumentalist. He played dozens of musical instruments, and a lot of times he was the only one who played every note on a song or an album. So if you were going to be playing in a band with Prince, you better be up to his standards. When he became the leader of the band, he was not dissimilar to a Walt Disney-like character. He knew what he wanted, and it was perfection, and he wouldn't rest until it was just right. So he put together bands of great musicians who would practice with him. He would push them to their limits. And kind of like Walt, Prince wasn't interested in just one thing. Prince's artistic aspirations were varied. He didn't just stop at music. He made films. He pioneered selling music online. Prince was a visionary in his field, but he recorded music for Warner Brothers, and he made movies and soundtracks for Warner Brothers. And then when he wanted to leave Warner Brothers, he changed his name to a symbol and made music for himself. But he didn't make music for Disney. I mean, how could he? He was the guy who caused Tipper Gore to start the Parents Music Resource Center and put these parental advisory stickers on albums. Not exactly the Disney image. Okay, there's one thing. Prince was the special guest on Muppets Tonight in 1997. Muppets Tonight was a 1990s refresh of the classic Muppet variety show format that brought them to superstardom in the 1970s. When Prince hosted in the second season, he starred in a number of sketches and performed a couple songs, Starfish and Coffee from his album Sign of the Times, and She Gave Her Angels, a song that showed up on his digital download box set Crystal Ball. Muppets Tonight was a Jim Henson production that aired on Disney's ABC and aired reruns on the Disney Channel. And that's it. I'm sorry, guys. There's really nothing. Prince didn't really connect with Disney that much. I think this just might be it. Wait, what? Can you hear that? Those drums. Can you hear them? I don't have anything else plugged in. What was that?
Tell me who in this house will know about Prince. I mean, really. If you know about Disney, say, oh yeah.
Oh yeah? Camille?
Yeah.
Okay, some Prince lore. Camille was an alter ego of Prince. He pitched his voice up a couple of octaves to create a more androgynous persona. Prince was always exploring gender, masculinity, femininity, and how both reside in all of us. In fact, that symbol that he changed his name to, the love symbol, was a combination of the symbols for male and female. He was going to release a whole album of music as Camille, but he shelved the project and instead released some of the tracks on his album Sign of the Times.
Eric?
Yes, Camille?
Is the water warm enough?
Yes, Camille?
Shall we begin?
I guess, Camille. Okay. Camille seems to think there's something more here. Prince and Disney. So let's get digging and we'll figure out what it might be. So that whole water warm enough thing, that's from Computer Blue on Purple Rain. Maybe the Disney connection has something to do with Purple Rain. It is Prince's biggest album, and it was his big movie hit. So, let's see. Tracks from Purple Rain. Some of the tracks from Purple Rain were recorded at Sunset Sound in LA. In fact, most of Prince's early recordings happened at Sunset Sound in LA. He kind of loved that recording studio. And the Sunset Sound recording studio was founded by Disney legend Tutti Camarata. In 1958, the same year Prince, Madonna, and Michael Jackson were born. Before opening Sunset Sound, Tutti Camarata was the director of audio recording for Walt Disney Productions. Camarata was the one who ran most of the recording sessions for Disneyland Records and Buena Vista Records. And he was a musician himself. In the late 50s, Disney started getting into the record business, and they mostly made soundtracks and story records of Disney movies. But they eventually started recording musicians' albums for mainstream release. These were what spun off into Buena Vista Records. Tutti Camarata was one of these recording artists who released music under Disney's labels, but he also worked composing music for Disney's records and performing the technical job of engineering the recordings for these records that were going to be released. In 1958, Camarata saw how much Disney was racking up in bills at local recording studios, and he approached Walt about Disney buying their own or building their own recording studio. Walt told Tutti that he'd rather not own his own recording studio. He would rather be Camarata's client. So Tutti Camarata opened Sunset Sound and moved recording for Disneyland Records in Buena Vista to the facilities. But they also opened their doors to anyone who wanted to record music, like Prince. Prince loved recording at Sunset Sound. It became one of his go-to recording studios. From 1981 through the rest of his career, he recorded music there. Tracks from iconic albums like Purple Rain, Sign of the Times, and 1999 were recorded at Sunset Sound, the same studios where music from Mary Poppins was recorded and where Idina Menzel recorded the vocal for Let It Go from Frozen. Sunset Sound has a lot of Disney history and a lot of Prince history, but it's not a direct connection. Okay, that quote from Purple Rain about the water being warm enough, it was Wendy and Lisa, band members from The Revolution, who said it at the beginning of the song. So maybe we're supposed to find a connection to Prince through someone connected to him. Someone connected to Prince. Purple Rain. Wait a minute. Bob Cavallo. From 1979 until 1989, Bob Cavallo was Prince's manager. And this was the time period where Prince really blew up on the music scene. Bob Cavallo was there when Prince was writing and conceptualizing Purple Rain, and he even was a co-producer on the film. And some of Prince's other films too, like Under the Cherry Moon and the concert movie Sign of the Times. Cavallo left Prince in 1989 and started a management firm called Third Rail that represented more 90s bands like the Goo Goo Dolls, Green Day, and Savage Garden. I know. Okay, I'll get to the Disney. Because of his work on film and music management, Bob was the perfect candidate to take over the Buena Vista Music Group. Disney's music arm in 1998. Buena Vista Music Group was the evolution of what was happening in the 1950s and 60s with Tutti Camarata. Bob Cavallo was in charge of all of Disney's record labels, Walt Disney Records, Hollywood Records. He stayed on at Disney until 2012. The Buena Vista Music Group during that time became the Disney Music Group, and under Cavallo, they launched the musical careers of many a Disney Channel star like Hilary Duff, Miley Cyrus, and they even signed the Jonas Brothers away from Columbia Records. The Jonas Brothers. Wait, Nick Jonas. Nick Jonas had his own side project called Nick Jonas and the Administration. It was on Disney's Hollywood Records too, but the band was not his brothers. The Administration had quite the awesome lineup, and 3 of its members were drummer Michael Bland, keyboardist Tommy Barbarella, and bassist Sonny T. And all of them were members of Prince's backing band, the New Power Generation. So 3/5 of Nick Jonas and the Administration were from Prince's New Power Generation. Nick Jonas was first introduced to his princely band members by Minnesotan producer John Fields, who was friends with Michael Bland. Okay, I know, I'm starting to sound like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. This isn't working. We're getting close to Prince, but we're not quite getting to Prince.
Everybody wants to find the perfect one. Everybody's looking for, everybody's looking for, everybody's looking
Camille,
for
that's not helpful. No. Wait. Oh, that's from Graffiti Bridge. Everybody's looking for. Yeah. Graffiti Bridge was an album and Prince's sequel movie to Purple Rain. It was much lesser known than Purple Rain, but it was right off the heels of the soundtrack album Prince did for Tim Burton's Batman, and I got the sense that he was itching to get back into the movies. It does have a pretty big cast of musical performers. Prince pretty much debuted his new band, the New Power Generation. Morris Day and the Time are back in this one. Mavis Staples is there, and Tevin, oh my goodness. I think I got it. Powerline is Prince. Powerline. You know Powerline from a Goofy movie. He's essentially the MacGuffin of a Goofy movie. He's Max's favorite pop star. Max tries to impress Roxanne using Powerline's music and even claims he's going to perform with Powerline even though he has no real way of getting himself to that concert. Powerline both leads to the collapse and the rebuilding of Goofy and Max's father-son relationship. Powerline is so important to a Goofy movie, and he has so much Prince DNA. Okay, I know. Maybe you've heard that Powerline is an amalgam of Michael Jackson, Bobby Brown, and Prince. But he's mostly Prince, and here's why. When they were making a Goofy movie, director Kevin Lima knew that the Powerline concert scene was going to make or break the film. So the music had to be good. Music producer on the film, Bambi Moe, understood the assignment. She needed the song to fit the film, but it also needed to be timeless, and it needed to fit the pop music landscape of the 90s. So she turned to songwriter Patrick DeRemer to write the Powerline songs for the movie. DeRemer was a Minneapolis native who grew up performing in the same Minneapolis music scene as Prince in the 1970s. DeRemer co-wrote the songs Eye to Eye and Stand Out for the character Powerline. The song title Eye to Eye, the number 2, is reflective of what Prince always did with his song titles. I consider it another nod to Prince, although Prince probably would have used a little picture of an eye instead of the letter I, but I guess because we're talking about eyes, he used the letter I, and it's kind of like the reverse. But Prince would do that all the time with symbology and using the you or to for the words. He did that all the time. But wait, there's more connections to Prince in Powerline. So the Goofy movie had a song written for Powerline to sing, but they needed a voice to sing those songs. So music director Bambi Moe again was looking for who's the right person for the job. And she happened to be at Capitol Records for a totally different project when she heard a young and up-and-comer Tevin Campbell singing. And she knew instantly that he had to be the voice of Powerline. When she asked about who he was and what kind of work he had done, she found out that he was Prince's young protege and that he had sung in Prince's movie Graffiti Bridge. His first hit single was actually the Prince written and produced track Round and Round from the Graffiti Bridge album and movie. So to entice Tevin Campbell to the project and get a sound that would fit him, Bambi Moe got a hold of David Z. Rivkin, Prince's producer since back in the day. David Z would produce and arrange the tracks with a cool 90s sound. And he even enlisted St. Paul Peterson to play some of the instruments on the tracks. St. Paul was all over Prince side projects and associated groups like Morris Day and the Time, as well as fronting Prince's project, The Family. David Z and St. Paul decided to record the tracks for Powerline at Prince's Paisley Park Studios in Chanhassen, Minnesota, Prince's home studio. There is a chance that Prince could have been around while they were working on Eye to Eye and Stand Out. No proof, but there's a chance. And that's not all. Tevin Campbell didn't get to go out to Paisley Park to record his vocals, so he recorded his vocals at Prince's other favorite recording studio, Tutti Camarada's Sunset Sound. And at those vocal sessions, he was joined by Rosie Gaines to sing backup on Eye to Eye. She's that female voice you hear on the track. Rosie Gaines was Prince's powerhouse female vocalist in his band, The New Power Generation. Rosie was one of Prince's favorite duet partners of all time. Okay, let's recap. Powerline from a Goofy Movie's songs were written by a peer of Prince in the Minneapolis scene. The songs were produced and performed by Prince's producer and a former bandmate. And the songs were sung by Prince's protege and a current bandmate of his. And all of this work was done at his personal recording studio and his other favorite recording studio. Powerline has more Prince DNA than anything. Okay, Camille, I think we're done. That was it, right? I got it, right?
Paisley Park is in your heart.
Yeah, I said Paisley Park.
Paisley Park is in your heart.
But that was it, right? So that's not it. I did mention Paisley Park, so there's something else at Paisley Park. Paisley Park, like I mentioned, was Prince's recording complex in the suburbs of the Twin Cities. It was not far from his home, so he could be there all the time. But it wasn't just a recording studio. It had a sound stage, it had secret rooms, practice spaces. It was a multimedia lab for creativity and performance, and other performers, of course, could book it out as well. Okay, let's see. The Minneapolis-based family band The Jets recorded a lot at Paisley Park. You might know them for their big hit, Crush on You. But there's a very good chance that their end credits version of Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers was recorded at Paisley Park. Maybe? Or maybe it was The Muppet Babies. In 1988, the touring show of Muppet Babies Live rented out the soundstage at Paisley Park to rehearse for their show. They actually kept Prince from using the soundstage for himself for a concert. He had to perform that concert in the parking lot of Paisley Park. I know Prince could sometimes be difficult to work with, but he had nothing on Miss Piggy.
You need to purify yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka.
Okay, it's still not it. Purify yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. That's a famous line from Purple Rain again, but we're talking about water Again. Okay. Oh, Prince had a big hit that was used in a pretty prominent way in Disney Touchstone's Pretty Woman. With water, I might add. In the movie, Julia Roberts' character famously sings along to the Prince song Kiss on her Walkman while she takes a bath, purifying herself, maybe, while she listens to Prince. How about that?
Something in the water does not compute.
Does not compute. Okay. Yeah, those ones weren't really that connected either. In fact, none of my connections are really that direct. They haven't really connected Prince to Disney directly. Even that Powerline stuff, man, I thought that was really good. And the clues, Camille, they're not really helping. All this stuff about water, there's too much water, too many clues. Is the water warm enough? Purify yourself in the water. Something in the water does not compute. Then you were talking about everybody's looking for water, looking for Paisley Park water, looking for, I don't know. There's no direct connection, or I just can't find it. Wait, water, looking for, finding water, finding in the water, Finding Nemo? Finding Nemo? Is that it? Paisley Park turned into a Prince Museum guided tour experience after Prince passed away in 2016. A few years back, I visited Paisley Park and they showed us around the entire complex. There were recording studios. The recording studios where the music of Powerline was recorded. There was a giant, vast sound stage where Prince staged his concert tours and filmed music videos, and it was the one where the Muppet Babies practiced. But then there was a side door off of the soundstage, and it led us into a smaller room. It was an intimate club space, cabaret tables, but also cozy purple couches and chairs. And there were small, intimate spaces to have a conversation, but also a bar and a stage like you would find in a small music club. When we entered the space, our tour guide told us that Prince would often host small parties and get together with friends here. Sometimes he would debut new music to friends on this stage. He had performed some concerts here with his most recent band, Third Eye Girl, before they launched their record. However, we were told that most often, Prince would end up playing his favorite movie of all time on the big screen behind the stage. Finding Nemo. Prince's favorite movie was Finding Nemo, and he watched it all of the time at Paisley Park. But not just at Paisley Park. His love of Finding Nemo didn't just end at home. He took Nemo and Dory and Marlin on the road with him too. There's a very famous story that Questlove tells about Prince. I just love a story about Prince. You may know Questlove from The Roots or as Jimmy Fallon's band leader on The Tonight Show. Anyway, during Prince's musicology tour in 2004, Questlove and some friends of his were going to the tour stop in Philadelphia. Prince asked Questlove to throw him a party after the show. And Questlove had to pull a lot of strings to get it set up exactly as Prince requested. Best of all, though, Questlove would get to DJ the party. At this post-show party, Questlove started playing some records by Fela Kuti. He knew that Prince would love Fela's music based on the kind of music that Prince makes and the kind of music that he listens to and is inspired by. But quickly, Prince asked him to play something else. Questlove put on another Fela song, and all of a sudden, Prince's assistant came over to him with a DVD case and asked him to play this instead. When he opened the case, it was a copy of Finding Nemo. The way Questlove tells the story, he was replaced by Finding Nemo at the party. But I don't know if that's truly the story. From what I've heard and what I've read, it just kind of seems that Prince always loved to end the night by watching Finding Nemo. Multiple times. He just really loved Finding Nemo that much. There you go. I think that's it. Camille? Camille? Oh, that must be it. There you go. We finally found it. Prince's Disney connection. Like a clownfish in a dentist office waiting room. It was just there. We had to go and find it. By the way, I made some shirts inspired by this group of pop stars. Kind of like a mashup of these pop icons in Disney style. You can check them out at shopsynergylovescompany.com. I'll link it below. We absolutely can't talk about 80s pop airwaves without exploring the voice, Whitney Houston and Disney. Born in 1963 in Newark, New Jersey, Whitney Houston was surrounded by music. Her cousin Dionne Warwick would have a substantial music career of her own, and Whitney's mother, Cissy Houston, was a big name in gospel music. Whitney grew up performing with her mother at New Hope Baptist Church. By the time Whitney was a teen, her family knew she was special and she began pursuing a music career. As a young adult, Whitney was discovered by the legendary Clive Davis, who began working with her to produce an album. She was 22 years old when her debut self-titled album Whitney Houston dropped in 1985. Immediately, it was a sensation. It hit number 1 on the charts, as did its 1987 follow-up Whitney. Combined, those two albums had a total of 7 number 1 singles. Saving All My Love for You, How Will I Know, The Greatest Love of All, I Want to Dance with Somebody Who Loves Me, Didn't We Almost Have It All, So Emotional, and Where Do Broken Hearts Go? I'm sure you heard all those songs in your head as I was telling you the titles. By her third album, I'm Your Baby Tonight, the momentum was fierce. She continued her streak of number 1 singles, and in the age of MTV, fans couldn't get enough of Whitney on screen. 1991's Super Bowl performance proved that. For a long time, Hollywood was trying to hook Whitney for the silver screen, and she finally signed on to a project that would launch her career even further into the stratosphere. 1992's The Bodyguard. Though she basically played a fictionalized version of herself, a huge pop star, and she received some harsh criticism for her acting performances, audiences loved her in the movie, and the world now saw Whitney as a movie star. Her smash hit cover of Dolly Parton's I Will Always Love You launched her music career even further. But what about the Disney? This show is about Disney, right? The Bodyguard was a Warner Brothers film, but all the other studios were jealous of the combo of box office and Billboard charts that Whitney garnered for the movie and its soundtrack, which was basically a Whitney Houston album. They all wanted their own Whitney Houston movie project. In 1995, 20th Century Fox got a turn with Waiting to Exhale. And in 1996, Disney's Touchstone Pictures had The Preacher's Wife, which starred Whitney as the title character, Julia Coleman Biggs, the wife of Reverend Henry Biggs, played by Courtney B. Vance. The Preacher's Wife is a remake of the 1947 film The Bishop's Wife, but this one features a modern gospel music-centered setting. In the story, Reverend Henry Biggs's church, which is located in a poor New York neighborhood, is struggling. His marriage to his wife, Julia, is strained as he becomes consumed with church responsibilities. When Henry prays for help, an angel named Dudley, played by Denzel Washington, is sent to guide him. However, Dudley soon finds himself drawn to Julia, which adds a complicated twist to his mission. Throughout the film, Dudley helps Henry rediscover his faith and reconnect with his wife and his community. Whitney Houston's memorable musical performances helped the movie explore the themes of love, faith, the importance of family, and community. And it all takes place at Christmas time, making it a great pick for your holiday viewing. The Preacher's Wife allowed Whitney to connect with her gospel roots. The movie even had an appearance by Whitney's mother, gospel star Cissy Houston. And its hits I Believe in You and Me and Step by Step gave Disney and Whitney the synergistic movie and soundtrack success that the studios were searching for ever since The Bodyguard. Whitney connected with Disney on screen and in song, but the more important connection for Disney was actually Whitney Houston's connection to Denzel Washington, or his production company anyway. Whitney had been producing her musical projects for a while, and with her becoming a movie star, she noticed big-name actors often had production companies to produce the movies they starred in, and they could also support other projects they believed in with their production companies from behind the scenes. Denzel Washington's Mundy Lane Entertainment was a production company on the Preacher's Wife film. During the project, Whitney wanted to explore a production company of her own, and she struck up a friendship with the head of Mundy Lane, Deborah Martin Chase. Deborah Martin Chase had always been a fan of movies. As a kid, she loved going to the movie theater any chance she got. She just couldn't get enough. But the young film buff didn't think she could pursue a career in Hollywood. There weren't many black and brown movie producers, and women were also few and far between. Instead, she pursued law, which actually led her to Hollywood as a lawyer for Columbia Pictures' legal department. Because of her interest in the production side of things, she gravitated away from law and tried her hand at producing. By 1992, she was hired by Denzel Washington to run his production company, where she was responsible for some pretty big movies, like The Pelican Brief, Courage Under Fire, and of course, The Preacher's Wife. When she met Whitney on the production of The Preacher's Wife, they became professionally close, and Whitney was able to convince Deborah Martin Chase to leave Denzel and help her start her own production company. Chase would serve as the executive vice president of Whitney Houston's Brown House Productions. The name came from Bobby Brown, Whitney's husband, and a star in his own right. With the production company getting its start from a connection made on a Disney Touchstone movie, Whitney and Deborah actually stayed with Disney for their first Brown House production. As early as 1993, Whitney Houston was trying to get an updated version of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella off the ground as an event TV movie. It would hopefully air on CBS with Whitney in the title role, but the project was delayed and then shelved. That is until Whitney had a producer like Deborah on her side and a connection to the Walt Disney Company, who had recently purchased ABC. CEO Michael Eisner wanted to relaunch its On Again, Off Again anthology series, now dubbed The Wonderful World of Disney. So Eisner, of course, needed a big television event for its launch, and he loved star power, which Whitney Houston had plenty of. At this point, Whitney felt that she had aged out of the role of Cinderella, so she would take on the role of the fairy godmother. Not being the main star would also give Whitney more time to be in that producer role. Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella was originally conceived as a TV movie in the 1950s, starring Disney legend Julie Andrews as Cinderella, and helped launch her career. For the 1997 adaptation with Whitney Houston as the fairy godmother, they would need a young star who could sing and act like a younger Whitney Houston. Brandy Norwood idolized Whitney Houston as a young girl, and she wanted to be a performer herself. She started acting and singing professionally at the age of 11, and by the time she turned 17, she had released a hit album and had landed her own sitcom, Moesha. Brandy would make the perfect Cinderella, and she and Whitney would be joined on screen by some pretty heavy-hitting stars like Bernadette Peters, Whoopi Goldberg, Jason Alexander, and another young actor, Paolo Montalban, as Prince Charming. To expand the story, songs from other Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals were added to the list. Michael Eisner and Disney wanted a big event, and that's what they got. Over 60 million viewers tuned into the special and gave ABC the best Sunday night ratings it had had in over 10 years. That ABC acquisition was looking pretty good to Disney right then. Cinderella was a success and a great testing ground for Brown House Productions. Thanks to Deborah Martin Chase, Whitney Houston had really gotten bit by the producer bug. And for their next project, Whitney wanted to focus on just producing and being behind the scenes. Let's take a quick break from Disney, though, to talk about something so Disney that Whitney did in 1998. Wait, take a break from Disney to talk about something so Disney? During the 1990s, the Disney decade, the company had improved upon the Disney animated musical success model that was introduced in The Little Mermaid. Stories would be both epic and classic, familiar. The voice cast would recruit some Hollywood A-listers to give the project some clout. Broadway songwriting teams would tackle the music, and then Disney would enlist a pop star to do a radio-friendly pop version of one of the songs to be played all over Top 40 and adult contemporary radio. It worked on Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Hercules, Pocahontas. I actually did an episode on these pop versions of Disney songs with performer Tammy Tuckey a couple years back. Go check it out. One of the brains behind this model at Disney was chairman of the studio's Jeffrey Katzenberg. Katzenberg had done so much for Disney's movie productions in the 80s and 90s, especially animation, that he was seeking a higher position in the company. CEO Michael Eisner, though, he withheld the job upgrade, and Katzenberg left to create DreamWorks, SKG. He's the K in SKG. The other two are Steven Spielberg and David Geffen. For DreamWorks, Katzenberg would bring both the Disney hand-drawn animation movie musical and the Pixar computer animated movie making models and hit the ground running to make some DreamWorks animated features. The Pixar model resulted in Ants, with a Z, to go head-to-head with Pixar's A Bug's Life. And the hand-drawn epic musical was The Prince of Egypt, an idea that Katzenberg had carried with him from the Disney cutting room floor. Based on the Bible story of Moses, the movie had an all-star cast. Stephen Schwartz wrote the music, just like he had for Pocahontas and The Hunchback of Notre Dame for Disney. And the radio-friendly pop version of the movie's ballad, When You Believe, was recorded by two powerhouse hit-making vocalists, Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. See what I mean about Whitney doing something so Disney, just not for Disney? Let's get back to Disney. Young adult literature author Meg Cabot's agent had been one of the over 60 million watching Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella on ABC. The Wonderful World of Disney's Cinderella was a classic yet fresh retelling of the princess story, and Meg Cabot had been writing a modern Cinderella-like princess story. They liked what they saw in the TV movie, and they sought out Deborah Martin Chase with an advanced copy of Meg Cabot's latest work. It hadn't even been published yet, but it really felt like it had that film potential. When Deborah and Whitney read Meg Cabot's The Princess Diaries, they agreed that it should be a movie, and they wanted to be the ones that would make it. Disney had been looking to revitalize their live-action family films. It was still the Disney decade, and live-action films were still in need of a refresh. They had a remake of The Parent Trap starring a young Lindsay Lohan in the pipeline, and The Princess Diaries would be a great next step. Something original, but with the feel of a classic Disney story. Whitney Houston and Deborah Martin Chase, along with Disney, worked to procure the film rights and got to work planning to turn The Princess Diaries into a movie. Brownhouse Productions was ready for the big screen. The Princess Diaries starred an up-and-comer Anne Hathaway as Amelia Mignonette Thermopolis Rinaldi, Princess of Genovia. Or Mia, as her friends called her. Mia didn't even know she was a princess until she met her long-lost paternal grandmother, the Queen of Genovia, played by the original Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella from 1957, Disney legend Julie Andrews. In the movie, Mia is just trying to navigate her awkward teen years when she gets her royal news. Then she has to start adding in other stuff to worry about, like international diplomacy. You've seen this one, right? If you haven't, go fix it now. It is a classic. Well, after this episode. Go to Disney Plus and watch it. Like, for real. I really love Whitney's role in this movie. And she's not even in it at all. She really was a producer. I have found some pictures online with her and the cast of the film behind the scenes. And there's an especially great one of Whitney having a one-on-one conversation with Anne Hathaway while on set. The movie turned out to be great, and Whitney got to be a hands-on producer. She was ready to go about producing on her own without Deborah Martin Chase. Well, kind of. Deborah Martin Chase actually left Brown House just after The Princess Diaries in 2000, and she created her own production company, Martin Chase Productions. But she didn't go too far. Her company joined Whitney's Brown House on their next project together. So they were still working together on producing things, even though they were just using two separate banners. And their next project would be working together with Disney again, but this time on cable TV, the Disney Channel. It's kind of strange that Brown House Productions would go from a made-for-network TV movie to a big Hollywood theatrical release and then to cable TV. But when the project is right, it's right. And Disney Channel original movies were becoming a force to be reckoned with. And the DCOM, the Cheetah Girls, had Whitney Houston written all over it. The Cheetah Girls was the first time that music would be at the center of a Disney Channel original movie. There was an opportunity to release a soundtrack for the movie, another first for a DCOM. You see, the Cheetah Girls is the story of a fictional girl group who would become an actual real touring girl group with albums and everything beyond the movie itself. To make the band, Disney picked a star from their sitcom That's So Raven, Raven Simone, and to fill out the group, they added members from a real-life girl group, Adrienne Bailon and Keely Williams from 3LW, as well as performer Sabrina Bryant. The story was once again adapted from a young adult novel, and just like The Princess Diaries, it was an uplifting story of female empowerment. These were the stories Whitney wanted to tell in the movies that she produced. Whitney Houston and Deborah Martin Chase continued on together with sequels for both The Princess Diaries and The Cheetah Girls, and even crossed over the pool of stars. Cheetah Girls' Raven Simone landed a prominent role in Princess Diaries 2. In addition to these two film franchises, Deborah Martin Chase split off of Whitney's productions to do some other Disney work on her own. She did go on to produce some more for Disney with Martin Chase Productions, like Disney Channel's Lemonade Mouth. Whitney Houston's impact on movies from behind the scenes is often not known by Disney fans. Like I said in the intro, I wasn't aware of her work with The Princess Diaries and The Cheetah Girls until I read about it in Ashley Spencer's Disney High. And as I did research for the episode, I kept finding social media posts online where people were shocked by the same revelation. Whitney stayed behind the scenes, and she really did become a great producer. She had started her career when she was young, and she wanted to empower young actresses to tell stories on the screen that would in turn inspire young audiences. This was Whitney using her fame and talent to shine the light back on others, not just try to produce movies with the spotlight for herself. I think that's a testament to her character as a celebrity. Up to this point, Whitney's Brown House Productions had done all of its films with Disney, under ABC, Walt Disney Pictures, and the Disney Channel. Brown House and Whitney only produced one more film. In 2012, Deborah Martin Chase once again joined Whitney Houston in the remake of the movie Sparkle. It starred Jordan Sparks as the title character, and Whitney took on the role of her mother. But this would be Whitney Houston's final role. While the movie was in post-production, Whitney Houston tragically passed away on February 11th, 2012, at the age of 48. She was found unresponsive in her hotel room at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills, just before she was scheduled to attend a pre-Grammy Awards party. The world was shocked. Fans were devastated, And when Sparkle was released to theaters in August of 2012, Deborah Martin Chase described the event as tough. She expressed that they were really happy with how the movie turned out, but it would be difficult to see Whitney on screen one last time. The film was dedicated to Whitney, and fans everywhere mourned her loss and remembered her extreme talent. And in the way that Whitney Houston's subtle behind-the-scenes touch influenced Disney fans in a way that not many of us fully realized, Disney took the opportunity to subtly nod to Whitney Houston's influence in the summer of 2024. After Whitney's Brown House helped Disney Channel original movies showcase music in a big way with the Cheetah Girls franchise, they kept getting bigger, like High School Musical, Zombies, and The Descendants, which takes place in the Kingdom of Auradon, where Disney princesses and princes live their lives together beyond their individual movies. In the fourth installment of the Descendants series, The Rise of Red, they cast Brandy and Paolo Montalban as Cinderella and Prince Charming, reprising the roles they had in 1997's Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. In my mind, this pulled Whitney's fairy godmother into the world of the Descendants. As far as I'm concerned, it's canon. And I really think that Whitney would have loved The Descendants. It mixes the themes from all of her Disney-produced projects, fairy tales, empowering stories, and music in a more contemporary setting. The Descendants' Rise of Red, to me, is one last final secret tribute to Whitney Houston and her impact on the Walt Disney Company. And that brings our look at the biggest icons of 80s music and Disney to a close. From Madonna's reinvention to Michael's innovation, Prince's imagination, and finally Whitney's inspiration, each of these legends help shape not only pop music, but the way Disney connects with culture itself. These four artists defined an era when MTV, movies, media, all began to merge. And Disney, whether it was in the background or at the center of the story, was right there evolving alongside them. And if you enjoyed this look into how Disney found synergy with pop music icons, you'll love the other stories on this channel. From theme parks to television to Disney's surprising connections across entertainment history. And remember, sometimes the most magical Disney experiences happen all around you. You just need to know where to look. So until next time, keep discovering the magic in everything.